Hello and welcome to this video where I'm not sure if this is a tutorial, a walkthrough, a devlog, but it's basically on making a very simple VR skiing game. So some years ago I was making a little 2D game of where it was just a very simple skiing game. Go left and right based on the sort of things you would have seen in the 80s. I made this in about half an hour and I thought a couple of days ago, well a week or so ago, what if I did something with the exact sort of same mechanics but in virtual reality? You know, something kind of quick and simple. So that's what I decided to do. It took a bit more time than I was expecting because of tinkering time. So I've jumped into Unity. I've created a 3D core project. Once I'm into Unity itself, I've gone into the window package manager where I've made sure I've got the all-in-one SDK installed. I've gone into build settings, nothing to change here because I'm just going to use my Quest as a desktop VR, makes development a bit quicker. I've made sure I've ticked on the Oculus and I've ticked any fixers, XR plugin, I've ticked the Oculus button. That should be enough to give you desktop VR using your Quest. I'm currently plugged in. I'm in the Oculus, well the Meta devices window, is that what it's called? I'm not sure anymore. But it still says Oculus there. It still thinks I'm on USB, not on USB 3. I am on USB 3. Still don't understand why it's doing that. This basically means if I press play in Unity, it should pop up on my screen. There we go. So there we go, I'm looking around, we can see that it is in fact working. I'll explain what this text and stuff is well shortly. Okay, so I'll just go through the quick steps. If you've not watched my other video, I'll just create a new scene. It's fairly straightforward. Yes, I'll save changes to that, not sure what I did. I started just by adding a plane for the ground. I always think it's really important to give yourself something to position it in reality, where it's going to be, to put some perspective onto it. I'm just going to put that in the 0, 0 coordinates, always important. I'm just going to add come down to my prefabs, sorry, packages, find the all-in-one, there we go, so XR Core SDK, not plugins, prefabs. I'm going to find the OVR camera thing, so camera rig, drag that on. I've now got a camera rig, and so on from there on. This is where I can now start making the game. Yeah, I always set this to floor level. I can expand on this a little bit. Got the tracking space, got the anchors. We will be making some changes to our center. Well, we'll be using this shortly. So I'm just going to go back and talk through sort of how I've created the game that you saw at the beginning of this video. So I'm going to get rid of this scene because I don't want to go through the whole process step by step. It takes too long. Oh, that's what I'm doing. Back up here. So assets, back into my scenes, to my start screen. So I've started with the start menu. No, I don't want to save change to that. You can see I've got the camera rig, I've got a light, I've got the plane. Yes, I've added a few extra little things. I've added terrain so we can have something around when you actually got the camera on so you can see around you. I've added some trees. These were quickly made in Blender just using 2 cylinders. And I've created this UI cube. All the UI cube is, it's a cube that I've stretched and scaled. And then I've put a canvas onto it. I think showing how I do the canvas, by the way, is kind of useful. So I will just go back to another scene. I should have done this beforehand. If I just add a cube, so this cube is 1 meter cubed. So if I stood in front of this, it would be about just a bit above my waist height. And if I want to add a canvas, so I'm going to add canvas. The canvas is obviously massive. If I zoom out, that's how big the canvas is. And of course in VR that's not what you want. We want this in world space, otherwise it can get a little bit disorienting. But it's still massive. The easy thing to do now is where it says width and height, it literally is 1200 meters by nearly 600 meters. This is a big screen. I'm just going to go 1 by 1. I can now, I'll change this to 0, 0 again. I like to do 0 coordinates. Zoom in. It should now be close enough to our cube. Where's our cube gone? Ah, the cube wasn't at 0, 0 either. There we go. So I've got the canvas, and there we go. And now if I drag this canvas onto my cube, wherever I move the cube, canvas goes too. It's just a good way of positioning things in your VR space while you're kind of learning how to do things and setting stuff up. Just bring that down. So that's kind of how I've made my cube, my UI cube. And again, I could now go on to add text boxes. That also is massive. Let's shrink that down a little bit. Oops, wrong bit. Okay, there we go. And then if I move the whole thing around, it should take it with it. So that's how I've made the cube. Okay, I'll go back to my other seat. No, again, not save changes. So there we go. I've made the UI cube, and this just helped me debug things a little bit. Okay, so I've got the UI cube, I've got my canvas, I've got a title text box for the title of the game, instructions. I want the person to play a T-pose because mainly I need to measure your height for the part of the gameplay. And then there's just some debug information so I could see exactly what it was doing. So if I press play on this now, in fact you might have seen this when I had it running earlier, it should start reading out my height, and I'm currently sat down in my chair. So yeah, my quest is about 1 metre off the floor, but if I lift it up, there we go. So I'm basically holding the quest in my left hand up above the computer. So we can see, there we go, it's measuring the height from the floor, and that's going to be important for this gameplay mechanic. My goal was to do something as basically low cost, low skill motion body tracking. Okay, so I've got my camera rig. I've already gone to the manager where I've said floor level. Do I need to do anything else? No, I don't do anything else on there. That's it for now. Yep, that's fine. What I am interested in is also looking at my tracking space, looking at my anchors. So again, I've gone to my left hand, right hand, and I've put a left controller. Actually, I've just put a tracking sphere on there. We go. Have I done something wrong on this one? Seems to have made the mistake there, where I've got a right hand OVR controller prefab, which is my right touch. I've not added one up here, so I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to come down to my prefabs. I'm going to find the OVR controller prefab, drag it onto anchor, and just choose left hand. Okay, so I've got left hand. You don't really need these. I've also got a tracking sphere, which is just is nothing special. It's just a sphere. It's just so I can see that so I can see what's actually tracking. Made it a bit easy before I put the controllers on. Not needed at all at the moment. But I have called it tracking sphere, and I have given it a tag. In fact, it is important. This video is going to be terrible to watch. So you can see I've basically had this tracking sphere, which is a small sphere. Like I said, didn't really need them. But what I've done is I've called them tracking sphere, and I've given them the tag left and right. That will become important during the gameplay itself. So to do that, if you're not sure how to add tags, I just go on to add tag. You can just plus button and give it a new tag name, and then make sure you go back and select them. So if I select both of them here, no, I don't want to do that. I can just go and choose left and so on and right. Okay, so that's going to be a way of me tracking where the hands are in the game space. I've also added these two boxes. Now at first I was going to use where your hands were in relation to your head. So if your hands went to the left of your head, then let's turn left. If your hands to the right of your head, turn right. But if you rotate your body to the left and right are no longer relevant. That's forward and backwards. And this is where you need a lot of maths, and my maths still struggle with a little bit. So I want something a whole lot simpler. I've added this left cube and right cube, and these are basically fastened to the OVR camera rig, but not the tracking space. So we can see that they're parented. So if I move the camera rig around, the boxes move too. And basically what I'm going to do is, if both hands are in the left box, that's the ski, in the left box, then turn left. If both hands are in the right box, then go to the right. It's as simple as that. So again, I've created these collision boxes. They are tagged left collision and right collision. So that is all I need. I've added, so they are just boxes, but I have put a box collider. I've got a script called collision controls, and I've also put a rigid body which is set to kinematic. That means they're not solid, but they do detect a trigger event. Yep, I've also ticked the is trigger box. Let's have a quick look at the code that I have attached to that. So if we go to the collision controls, I've got a public string called hands. So is this the left hand box or the right hand box? On trigger, enter. So if that left trigger sphere touches it, then I can say the left hand is -1. If it's left hand, if the left hand touches the left box, then we set in this main game left hand to -1, meaning the left box being triggered. The same for the right hand, -1 and 1. So -1 is the left hand's touching, 1 is the right hand's touching. And then trigger enter, I just set them back to 0, so that means you've left the boxes. So inside my main game, I have a function. I have a, where is it? There we go. I have these these public variables that I've also made static, so that this file can talk to this, this class can talk to this class. It's not great programming, but it means it works. So basically it's just saying where the left hand and right hand currently are. Is it in the left box? Is it not touching the box? Is it in the right box? And that can trigger our event, just like pressing left and right on a D-pad. Okay, so what I am interested in, that's not really needed in this start screen just yet. What I have got is in my camera rig, I've made this script called main game. There's a whole lot going off in here, so I'm going to sort of talk through it a little bit. Again, I didn't know if this was a devlog or a tutorial, but take from it what you can. So in the main game, I've got these libraries for scene management, so we can load a level. I've got the UI. I'm not actually using the UI for now, but I am using TM Pro for my text box. If you've never seen this before, this header, what that does is back in Unity, it gives us this nice little title for each section. It just helps divide up your inspector, can make it a little bit easier to read. So tracking points, head. This is what's really important in this game. It's where is your head height. So at the beginning of the game, in this start screen, it's going to measure your height, which is exactly why I'd got height just there. Because if you bob down, if you crouch, if you lean into the ski, it's going to make you go forwards. In a good skiing game, it would make you go faster. So this is going to be the game object head. So back here over here, I have dragged onto there the center eye anchor. So tracking space, I drag the center eye anchor over to here. So it now knows that as a game object. I've then got the UI, so I've got the text box. This is just where I can debug some data onto screen. And I've got a timer text box. That's going to be the main game. So basically, I'm using this main game for both my start screen and my main game screen. You obviously have just witnessed that. The left hand and right hand. We'll leave these. Yeah, we'll come back. Oh, there we go. No, we'll use these. This is my what level are we loading when I press the go button. This is the current standing height. This doesn't actually need to be static anymore. This is because I already a different version of the code. So I've got the standing height. What's the maximum speed you want the skier to go, and what is your current speed? I've made these public so that you can play about with it in the inspector. If you want to play about with, how do you want to make your player feel sick? You want to play about with your speed settings a little bit. I've then got the velocity, so how fast we're moving, what's our maximum, like I've just said a moment ago. In fact, have I just doubled up on these? I think I've doubled up on these. And then friction. How quick do you want your skier to slow down if they stand tall? And then I have this a lot. If you look at any of my old 2D games, I always have a game state. Start screen, main game, game over. You might want this for high scoreboards and all sorts, but this is how I do things a lot. Okay, so in our start function, I'm not really using it other than if I'm in game state 1. If I'm in the main game, I want to create some checkpoints and set the velocity to 0. I'll come back to that in a little while. But we're not. We're in game state 0. So UI stuff, I've got a function further down that's just outputting that height. And I'm recording your current height. So as you stand up in your good old T-pose, actually for this you can just stand tall, I'm just going to set the standing height to whatever the position of the camera is, the center part of the quest. And then when you press the A button on the right hand controller, or for testing purposes you can press the space bar, it will then record whatever your current standing height is in standing height, which I was doing there anyway, so I've just doubled up some code, don't really need that anymore. And I set the game state to 1 and I load our main game scene. So again, that's coming from a variable that I've set by putting it in just there, level to load, main game. So it loads the main game, and then I can go into game state 1. But of course, that's not this scene. That's all that's going to do. So if I'm in this scene, it'll press the height. And when I press the go button, so there we go. I'm looking. So I'm sat down. So my height is 1.3 meters from the ground. I press my A button. You can see the test sphere by the way there. It loads the game up. Timer's already started counting down. And it knows that my standing height was 1.2 and my current height is 1.22. If I start to go down, there we go. We can see that it's suddenly started as moving. Okay, so that's the starting scene. So if you're not sure, that's just how we can get the input, and obviously different buttons for the different parts of the controller if you want to use something else. Okay, so let's have a quick look at our second scene. By the way, if you've never done multiple scenes, you do need to go into build settings. You need to make sure you've added them by adding your current scene. So right now I've got start screen. If I press that, it adds start screen here. If you don't add them, it will not load. It'll just throw an error instead. Okay, so where am I up to? Scenes. Main game. Yeah, I'll save some changes. I don't know what changes I made. Again, you can see it's pretty much the same thing. I've created the scene. I don't have a terrain anymore. I have added a skybox, and I've added 3 planes. So you can see I've got ground 1, but well, obviously ground 0, ground 1, ground 2. I do have light snow. That isn't actually working. This is an old particle effect from years ago, and it doesn't work in this version of Unity, which is unfortunate. I've got my camera rig. So same as previously, you can see I've got the same collision boxes and everything. I did have a UI cube, but I've actually turned it off for this one. And inside the camera rig, I've got the tracking space. I've got a player capsule, and inside tracking space, that's where I've got I put it into a hierarchy where I've got the left collision, right collision, the skis, but I've also got this floating canvas. So again, the canvas is set to world space. I've got just the one text box for the timer. And yeah, I've just put that under an empty and then dragged it under the camera rig again. So if the camera rig moves, it moves with it. Okay, now this is where I'm using real old school style graphics, or to say techniques. If I just zoom this really out and press, I'll just split the screen so you can see what's going on. I hope this is going to work, because I'm not actually wearing the headset. I've not come from the main menu screen, so it may or may not do it. So if I press space to play the game, is it? No, it's not working because it needs to come from the main menu. Okay, how can I make this? I'll have to go back to the main game. Oh, so frustrating. Save changes. Back to start screen, press play. Okay, so if I just now press the space bar, which is why it's important for testing, I should be able to press the go forward button. If we look, obviously I've not got the headset on, which is why it's confused. But if I just move, the background isn't moving anymore. Why is the background not moving? Okay, I had a slight error. I've changed the file names. It messed up one of the variables. Okay, so you can see as I move forwards, our actual main character is staying exactly where they are. It's the background that's moving past the player. If we keep our eye on this tile, as it gets sort of a certain distance away, it jumps back to the beginning of the game. And this is how a lot of sort of 2D games work. You have 2 backgrounds, and as one goes off camera, you bring the other one on. It's all theatrical stage sort of stuff. So you can see it's moving, it's jumping the whole thing. So basically I've attached the trees to the ground plane. Obviously I'm not trying to win the game here, by the way. So there we go, you can see it's jumped them over and back to the beginning. And it's just how you can do an infinitely running game. It's not an amazing effect, but it's just a quick way of doing procedurally generated infinite games. So you can see I've got in fact I'll have to come back to the main game now. So what I've done is I've created these 3 planes. These planes I have scaled to 10 by 10. That's important because a plane by default thinks, I believe it's 5 units wide, but I've scaled it by 10, so that becomes relevant for making them jump positions. If we jump into the code, I've got this scroll object code, number of tiles 3 because that's what I've got on screen, my tile size is 10 because that's a scale value. Inside my update function, I'm just getting the current position on screen. I'm using the main game's velocity, and that's why it wasn't working previously, because I'd actually changed this from it. I'd changed the name of the script while just fixing a few things and forgot to change the code here. So it's getting the velocity that you're moving based on your body height, and multiplying it by how much time's passed since the last frame. If it's less than your scale times 10, so it's behind you by 10 units, then I'm jumping it back to a starting position. Now this took a bit of tweaking. Again, my maths isn't great, so I didn't quite get the logic immediately, bit of algebra there, and then I finally update the change. So it's just moving the background over and over. Okay, so now so what's our next bit? So the next bit, I think that's no, we need to move it, don't we? We need to do actual collision detection. So obviously we've already seen that I'm saying if you've got your hands in the left box or the right box, then move right, and they both have to be in. Both hands have to be in, left or right. So I come back to my code down here. I'll share this code on GitHub, by the way, so if you do want to play with it, it'll be on GitHub for you to get. I'm outputting some stuff to the text box, which is the timer, and I've also put the standing height and your current head height in so you can use it for debugging purposes. I update the timer. If it's less than 0, you've run out of time. I've not done this bit yet, obviously. This is where you should then load your game over screen and move checkpoints. Now, I've not actually looked at the checkpoints, so that's the bit I've missed. To create the checkpoints, this video is going to be all over the place, I created a function called initialize checkpoints. So come right down towards the bottom. In fact, I'll show this first bit. I have this public game object flag. So there's my checkpoints, my flags. I've created a list to hold however many you want. At this point, my default is 10. How much space do you want between the checkpoints? And what range? What's the random range you want? So if I come down to initialize, I just loop through the number of checkpoints you want. I create a random number between, at this point it starts off between -5 and +5. I then instantiate a set of flags at this space multiplied by the space between. So I think mine was 20. So obviously at first it must be 0, then it'd be 1 times 20 and 2 times 20. And that's just don't rotate it. And then I add it to the list. Then to move them, I just do another loop through. And it's the same as scroll in the background. I just move the position based on how fast you are travelling. And once you are more than 10 units behind you, the player, I then update the position, choose a new random range. I'm also saying that for every time you go through all 10 checkpoints, I want to increase the range by a little bit. So it's going to get further apart, making it a little bit harder. This is not distance, by the way, it's how Flappy Bird kind of works. Okay, and then if you hit a checkpoint, you get 2 extra seconds. So I also tagged the checkpoints. If you 2 extra ones, 2 extra seconds. Okay, back into the makeup. We're nearly done, honest. So back in my main game loop, I'm saying if left hand is -1 and right hand is -1, so both hands are in the box, move left. If left hand and right hand are both 1, then move right. So my move left, move right functions down here. I separated them out just because I might want to change the method. I might want it to rotate rather than a straightforward sort of strafe. So I'm just getting the current same position thing. I get the current position, I add 1 to the X value, and then I write that back over the original. And same for left, just take 1 away. Not dissimilar to how we do Pong. So if you've made a Pong game in the past, same code. Okay, last little bit, I think. Last little bit is... there we go. If your head position, if your current head position is less than the standing height minus 15 centimetres, for those who don't use metric, that's about half a foot, about 6 inches, then I want to increase the velocity. And that's it. Now you might want to change this value. You might want to make it proportional to how tall somebody is. This also means if you do want to play it sat down, you can. You know, you don't have to be stood up. So it's proportional to where you were when you started the game. I've also left the keys in, so if you can still use up and left arrow keys. And then I've got a bit of slow down there. So if you are going faster than 0, then we just apply the friction value. And if you hit less than 0, then just 0 it out. That's it. And I've just put an extra thing. If you go to the left too far, you fall off the ground. It's just going to rebuild the level. So I think that was it really. I've got some UI stuff for just outputting some display screen. Okay, was there anything else before I press stop on the record? I think that's about it. Let's go back into Unity itself and have a quick look around. So it is a very simple game. It should have only taken about half an hour to actually make, but it took me several days because I really wasn't concentrating on it. I think this could be made something quite fun. Right now, it's not particularly fun. It gets you moving, gets you stood up, gets you bending down, gets you moving to the left, moving to the right, so it's a bit of exercise. But I think you could blend this with a Beat Saber style mechanic where you've got to reach out to grab things, sort of grab stuff in the air, grab stuff on the floor, avoid stuff. It could easily be made to a very kinesthetic, active game that could be fun. So like I say, I will put this code on GitHub so you can download it, apply it to your own scene. I don't know if there's anything else, but if you do have any questions, please leave them below. If you found any part of this useful, please like it, please put a positive comment below, subscribe to the channel if not already. There'll be more interesting, more focused videos coming in the near future. So I shall see you in the next one.